Hello, welcome to Forest Focus. The international break is upon us, with Nottingham Forest having 9 games left of the Premier League season to secure a Champions League place, something we all would never realistically have dreamed of at the start of the season. But here we are. So Forest are closing in on the Champions League, hopefully, but who else will join us? I decided it might be interesting to speak to our regular fan correspondents of all of the teams involved to see how they're feeling, who they think is going to make it, and bring you their views on the run-in for their sides. So with that in mind, I haven't spoken to Josh, our Liverpool fan, and I haven't spoken to Tom, our Arsenal fan, because I think they're pretty much nailed. But I did take some time to speak with the following supporters who are regulars on this podcast. Our Chelsea fan, Harry Daniels, David Mooney from Blue Moon Podcast for Man City, Rob Smyth for Newcastle, As Phillips for Brighton, Russ Goldman from the Cottage Chalk Podcast for Fulham, Steve Farmer for Aston Villa, and my namesake Matt Davies for Bournemouth. So we're going to spend about 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes, with each of them, get their thoughts on the run-in, go through their fixtures, and get a prediction, yes or no, will their team be in the Champions League? So I hope you enjoy this. We'll hear from Harry first, see how he's feeling about Chelsea, and then we'll take it from there. Do give us a like, do subscribe, do consider coming to our live show. The link is in the description. It's on Thursday, April the 3rd. I'll put another word for that in towards the end of this, no doubt. Like I say, hope you enjoy this, starting with Harry. Good to welcome our Chelsea fan regular Harry back to the show. Harry, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. As a Chelsea fan, not as well, but I'm good.
Yes, that was the thing we were saying before we started recording. You were the fan I was looking forward to speaking to most, because the optimism graph feels quite upwardly mobile for everyone else, but for you, I suspect it might not be. I mean, just for people who are not totally aware of the table, Chelsea are fourth, 49 points, so they're in the spots at the moment. Obviously, it's very condensed all the way down to 10th. You're only 5 points clear of Bournemouth. Before we get into specifics, how are you feeling about the current state of play at Chelsea?
So, I mean, at the moment, we're kind of sweating on this Cole Palmer injury, which will have a massive indication on how the rest of our season goes. So at the moment, we've heard today that apparently he's gone for a second scan on his hamstring, but also that we're hopeful that he'll be back after the international break. So I don't quite know how another scan, but also being hopeful they'll be back for the next game, go hand in hand. So if he's back for Spurs, which is what we're hopeful, because that Arsenal game just before the break, without him, we looked absolutely shot of anything. Now, we are missing a couple of others. Like, there's been a lot of talk about whether Jackson and the likes of Madueke are ready and are good enough. I think we've seen over the past month without them, and what we've had to play with Nkunku and with Sancho in particular, those two, quite how important some of those players are to us. They're all expected back after the break, which is what most Chelsea fans are clinging on to as a bit of hope, I think, at the moment.
What do you think is going on with Palmer? Is it the lack of Jackson that's a primary factor? Is it tactically the setup very different this season? What's the downturn in Palmer down to, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of confidence. I go back to the game we beat Southampton 4-0, and at the end of the game, he looked more distraught than happy that we picked up 3 points because of the chances that he missed. And that for me just highlighted a bit of a lack of confidence. And I think teams are starting to realize with us that, unfortunately, I think you asked me before, are we a one-man team? And I think when we look to see us without him, going forward in particular, we are turning into that a little bit, and teams are becoming a little bit more aware of that if you can nullify Palmer, that as an attacking force, we are not nearly where we need to be.
What's your take on Maresca? Because I've watched a few of your games. Even that Southampton game, the crowd was getting restless at 0-0. Are you wavering on him at all?
It's difficult. The start of the season, we played really well. Now, there is a little bit of maybe at the start of the season, he hadn't had long enough to implement what he wants to implement. And the longer he's had to do it, the worse it seems that we've got. Whether that's coincidence or not, I don't quite know. I still look at us, and it's not just Maresca, but I think there's lots of stats starting to go around at the moment about how much we struggle in big games and have actually done. I think Chelsea of past have been known for their big game mentality. And you look at Chelsea in the 2010s and, the 2000s, and how many of those big games and those big game players we had. And I think that's something we really look at now, like going into games against top sides, even when on paper we're going in with more form, that I'm just not expecting us to win. And I think that's a really, really big thing, that I don't trust him. And maybe it's the players as well, but I don't trust him tactically to win a game when it's going to be close.
Let's talk about those fixtures that are coming up then. You talked about some big
Yes.
games just for the run-in. You've got Spurs home, Brentford away, Ipswich home, Fulham away, Everton home, then Liverpool home, Newcastle away, Man United home, and of course you finish with Forest away, a game we'll discuss closer to the time. How do you view that run-in?
Really tough. I think we have the toughest run-in of most of the teams that are competing for Europe and competing for Champions League, which is why there is a lot of nerves going around the Chelsea camp at the moment about where we're going to finish. We're in the Conference League and we are heavy favourites for that tournament, and it would look like we would need to finish, what is it, 7th now to get Europa League. So that feels like a base, which is not the end of the world given where we were at the start of the season, but where we were going into Christmas, we would absolutely be very disappointed if we didn't get Champions League from there. I think this end of the season looks really tough. Literally those last 4 games, Liverpool, Newcastle, Man United and Forest. I mean, even before that, Fulham away, Everton, I think they're unbeaten in 9 now. I think our last 6 games are really, really tough.
Question I've been asking, last few have been asking the same people as just kind of a baseline thing. Will your team be in the Champions League next season? Yes or no?
No.
If not, then
I think we'll be close. I think it'll be Liverpool, Arsenal, Forest, City, and I would probably go Newcastle.
Tough.
Last question. That's assuming we get 5 places, yeah.
Last question I've not asked anyone else, because it'll be obvious when I ask the question. Is your Forest supporting fiance lording it over you?
Well, I have to say, at the start of the season, when we saw that game was the last day of the season, we wondered what that game would hold, and not maybe from such a positive point of view, where there was a little bit of worry that on the last day of the season that I could have, or my team could relegate her family's team on the last day of the season. And that would be just before we get married, would be something that would rock the boat a little bit. I didn't think it would be quite this way round. She is enjoying it, and absolutely. I've got a question for you. I don't know if anyone's asked it, and I've asked them the same question. Is just, of course, still in the FA Cup. What is a bigger priority to you and your fan base? If I told you could finish top 5 in the Premier League, or you could win the FA Cup, which of those two would you prefer?
We debated that quite a lot on the podcast, and also we have ex-players on and asked them. So the fan sentiment, I think, is more Champions League. I did a members poll about a month ago, and it's 59-41 in favour of Champions League. I think it might. If I did it again now, I wonder if it'd be different, having seen Newcastle win. And what
I was listening to a podcast today with a Brighton and a Villa fan, and they said seeing Newcastle win the Carabao Cup has changed their opinion slightly of how important a cup would do. I suppose the win of a Champions League gets you, the Champions League qualification, more inclined to be able to sign slightly higher caliber players. You're more inclined to keep players who might be having a little bit of appeal from other clubs as well, which I think is what goes into it. But yeah, if I told you you'd be in this position, and I mean, if people told me that Chelsea would be 4th at this point in the season, we'd be absolutely loving it. But looking at the last fixtures and the form we're playing in at the moment, it's definitely nerves.
I had a good look today. I did a podcast this morning as we record this, after we were linked with Gyökeres, which I entirely believe is fanciful. But I looked at the finances around it, and I think it'd be worth about 120 million pounds to the club, compared to having finished 17th last season, if you factor in prize money and TV money. So it does open a lot of doors. Then I looked at Villa and Newcastle and what they did with the money, and they didn't really go nuts. Like, Villa have actually made a big net profit, because there's a lot of nuance around it, around PSR and everything. So I don't know. I was at 100% Champions League. I am beginning to waver. I asked a couple of the ex-pros, one of them called Kelvin Wilson, who I won't be offended if you've not heard of him, but he played for Celtic when they beat Barcelona. He was in the team then, and he said 100% Champions League. And then asked David Prutton, who you might have heard of, and he was a bit more 50-50. So, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think the common consensus, Harry, to disappoint you is we want both now.
Yeah. I just, the reason I ask is because if you look at your lineups in the cup so far this season, there has been sizable rotation.
Yeah, I
And
definitely there will be Brighton.
Yeah, I was. That's why I ask: is at what point does Nuno go? Okay, we're far enough in the tournament that this is a serious chance of it now.
Probably, I think the only player that he might rest is probably Chris Wood in the quarterfinal because he's so important to us.
Yeah.
He's been banging in the Premier League goals, as you'll know, in your day job through FPL. So, I think we'll keep wrapping him in cotton wool. We love Taiwo, but he's not quite been the same this season. So, we shall see. Right, we'll leave it there. Do check out Harry's FPL channel, as I mentioned there, FPL Harry, for all your needs to win your mini league, hopefully. And we'll be back with Harry, like we say, last game of the season. I'll ask you one more quick question. Would you take this scenario right now then? A Chelsea win would get you in the Champions League and potentially ruin your marriage. Would you take that?
I hope it wouldn't ruin my marriage, but I would if Chelsea need to win on the final day to get Champions League, there won't be a second thought in my mind.
Excellent. Thanks very much to Harry. David Mooney from the Blue Moon podcast. Good to have you back with us after such a recent appearance. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, sir. Not too bad. Could have done with a better result at the City Ground, but there we are. You can't have everything, can you?
No, we're trying to, but no, you can't. We'll get into a little bit of that and the Brighton game, but I wanted to just get your thoughts and all the other fans, obviously, on how things are shaping up. The conversation with you is probably totally different to all the others because as we record this, we're waiting for news of the 115 charges to drop probably in the next few days. Maybe it will have by the time this comes out. How are you assessing the current picture then in terms of the 115 charges, how that clouds things? It feels like when the results are in, either you're cleared or you're not, and then you have to wait for sanctions. How do you view the current picture in general?
That's it, really. There's not really a lot to say, if I'm being perfectly honest. It's just waiting for the verdict to drop, and whatever happens. They're either guilty or they're not. There's not really much else to it. If they're guilty, then I imagine it won't have the swift conclusion that a lot of people will want because I imagine first off there'll be an appeal, and then. Like that will then have to go through the process. As far as my understanding of the process is, this is really pushing me to my limits now. I wish I'd read up on this, but from my understanding, there was an independent commission set up to hear the evidence of 3 KCs from I think a pool of 10. And if there is an appeal, it's basically 3 different KCs will hear the evidence again, and that's kind of how the process will go from there. So, I mean, if there is an appeal, you're probably looking at another. sorry to break this to everybody, but another year, 18 months. I don't know what it'll be after that. And that's obviously in the case of City being found guilty and City appealing. There is also the case that City are found not guilty and the Premier League appeals. So, like maybe we don't get a swift conclusion that we're hoping for. But let's say that we get a verdict and both sides go, we're not appealing this. Okay, we'll crack on with it from here. If City are not guilty, then obviously it raises questions for the Premier League and for everything else that has gone on here, because obviously there is there's been this massive cloud hung over City for 2.5 years, that ultimately the Premier League would then be saying, okay, well, the evidence says that they're not guilty and we messed up. And that's a bit of it's a massive reputation. It's massive reputational damage that's done. And then the other side of the coin is if City are found guilty and accept the verdict and don't appeal it and everything else, there then has to be, I think there's another commission set up to then decide what the sanction would be. So if, again, we're talking hypothetically, if there is a guilty verdict and it isn't appealed, there is a sanction to come. I imagine it doesn't come this season. I imagine it comes next season, and they're on in, and we kind of see what happens there.
Let's park all that then, because like you say, I don't think it's going to be resolved before Friday when this comes out. If we look at the fixtures for City and recent form, I mean, I've been 100% convinced that you'll get in the Champions League and you'll finish third. or even seconds, no problem. So just for people who are listening and aren't familiar with City's fixtures, they've got Leicester at home, United away, Crystal Palace at home, Everton away, Villa home, Wolves home, Southampton away, Bournemouth home, Fulham away as a run-in, which is pretty favourable on paper. The thing that gives me pause for thought, and I don't know how you view it, is not particularly the performance against Forest, where, on another day you get a point and it's a fairly drab 0-0. Against Brighton, I've only seen the highlights, but you could have conceded another 4 or 5 goals maybe on if things had gone a particular way. You probably should have lost the game. Are you confident that you'll get in now? Are you wavering or not?
Not sure. I'm really not sure. And this is really annoying for you because I didn't see the Brighton game either. I was at a wedding, so I had a really nice day, not being stressed by what City were doing. So I don't know if City should have won or lost that. You talk about the chances that Brighton had. City had a couple of them as well that they missed that they should have converted. I've only seen highlights, and again, the highlights always they always skew the balance to the quality of the chances. So I don't really know. I think the alarming factor is the number of times that there were Brighton players spare in City's box for some reason choosing not to finish. That was a bit of a worry. And as you say, at the City ground, if Edison doesn't have a hole in his hands, then they probably get out of that game with a point, despite not really having played that well. But you look at the fixtures, and I mean, weirdly, I'm quite happy with the run-in on the basis that there's that the teams that are around them now, they only have to play Villa and Bournemouth, and both of them are at the Etihad. Those are games that we've done this on the podcast recently, that you don't have to win these games, you just have to not lose them. And from where City are in the table currently, I mean, they're in 5th, which I think will be enough to qualify for the Champions League next season. I think it will be the top 5 that makes it. Newcastle are a point behind with a game in hand, but Newcastle's fixtures are pretty grim. I don't know if, having just won the Carabao Cup, if they will now, if that will kind of be their season petering out. It might be what galvanises them, and they might go on a winning run. But the truth is, you look at Forest, I actually think Forest are pretty much there. The fact is, you look below them, Chelsea, City, Newcastle, Brighton, Fulham, Villa, Bournemouth. I don't trust any of those teams to put a run together that is 6 games wins on the bounce, 7 games wins on the bounce. I know Brighton got close because I think they did 6 wins on the bounce recently. But I think overall control of this push for the Champions League will entirely depend on who loses the fewest games, and especially to each other. So as long as City get out of those games with Villa and Bournemouth, and they stay ahead of Villa and Bournemouth, I think I'll be quite happy with that, because I don't fancy really Everton. Moyes has done a good job since he's coming back. The United game is, I mean, toss a coin on that one. For some reason, United are terrible, but for some reason they keep taking points off City. And in theory, they should have no problem with Wolves, Southampton, those sorts of games. Fulham will be a bit tricky on the final day, but I mean, we hopefully will have a much clearer picture there. And I also don't know what impact the FA Cup will have on this, because for argument's sake, I don't fancy City go away to Bournemouth in the next round of the Cup. I don't particularly fancy that. They've beaten us already at Dean Court this season. Is it? Do people still call it Dean Court? By the way,
I call it the Vitality now.
The Vitality, yeah.
I've been sucked in by the corporate. Message.
By the corporate, yeah. I caught myself saying Dean Court, but City have lost there already this season. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that they lose there again in the Cup. And if they do, then either somebody is going to win the Cup for the first time, and somebody's going to win their first major trophy, or somebody will win their first major trophy since the 80s. And like, there's going to be the FA Cup gets suddenly blasted wide open. And does that then start taking attention away from the Champions League push? Because all the clubs that are in the FA Cup still are also in that Champions League push at the top of the table. So that'll be interesting as well. In terms of, if you want, I'll tell you what, to give you an idea of how confident I am that City will make it, I'm probably about 65% at the moment. I think they'll do it, but I think there are enough in the kind of space theory of parallel universes. There are enough parallel universes where City don't make it. for me to be concerned that this might be one of them. I don't really think City are very consistent this season. You don't have to be that consistent to get in. You just have to be slightly better than everybody else around you. They've City's run this season. They've not won more than 4 in a row all season. I don't see them bettering that all season now. Maybe if they can put another 4 in a row together at some point in this run, that might be enough to get them over the line. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I do think they will, and I think they'll. I did think they'll finish third. Maybe I think they finish fourth now, but I do think they will. You answered my last question there because you gave me how confident you were. So we shall leave it there. We'll please speak to David again. Well, maybe in the FA Cup. I don't know. Maybe for the semi-final.
No, we'll be out to Bournemouth, so it's fine.
We might be out to Brighton. I'm going to speak to our Brighton friends tomorrow morning. So yeah, we shall see. We shall see. David, thank you very much. Appreciate your time as ever.
Thanks for having me.
Before we speak to our next fan, just a quick word of thanks to the Trent Navigation and a reminder that you can watch the FA Cup quarter-final against Brighton at the Trent Navigation on the big screen on Saturday, 29th of March. On the outdoor screens throughout the pub. You can get your barbecue food and on the pizza kitchen as well. And cask ales are just £4. So thanks to Nav for that. And if you're looking for something to do after the Everton game, just a reminder that there's a post-match show with Thanks to Ra. They call themselves just a band from the 80s. So do check that out. Free entry. And again, get your food there. Enjoy a win, hopefully, for the Reds in the company of those guys for another of the great post-match shows at the Nav. So thanks to the Nav for their support, and enjoy our next fan as we continue to see who everyone thinks is going to make the Champions League next season. Our resident Newcastle fan, Rob Smyth, good to have you back with us. How you doing today, mate?
Yeah, very well. Good week, so can't complain.
Not a bad week.
Not a bad week.
Talk to us a little bit about Sunday and what it's done for you and the long-suffering Newcastle fans. And we'll before we talk about the impact that might have on the rest of the season, just Forest fans are pretty jealous of you watching you guys on Sunday.
I think that's at the end of the day, we boil it down to what we all love football for, and Sunday was what it was all about. No matter talking about Champions League in a bit and what that means, it's about getting a cup, breaking hoodoos, and Sunday was kind of perfect, a perfect microcosm of Newcastle in a way, really. Moments of joy, moments of terror. But all in all, it was a great game, a great performance. And finally to get that monkey off the back after so many years has been fantastic. And I think hopefully it can only be used as a further springboard over the success of the last few years to, bigger and greater things.
Let's talk about potentially bigger and great things in terms of European competition next season. Then Newcastle are currently 6th, only 1 point behind 5th, Man City, and 2 points behind Chelsea in 4th, with a game in hand. So it's looking pretty promising. As I've said to you before we start recording, speaking to a whole clutch of fans, there's so many teams who could make it. Before we look at your upcoming fixtures, how are you feeling in terms of the chances as we sit here right now?
I think it's been. I think when I've been on before, I've said it's been such an up and down season with brilliant runs and poor runs. And I think if you look at it, if you took the Carabao Cup final out of Sunday, it's been a bit of one of them patches recently. But I just think the win on Sunday will galvanise and boost the team almost in a dual way. Really, it will give them an impetus to push on and try and qualify for the Champions League, but also it will also remove a bit of pressure because they've achieved something, most fans thought would never happen. So they've got a monkey off the back. They've got themselves in a position where no matter what happens now this season, it's a historic one. So they can almost play with a bit of freedom as well. So as much as there'll be a drive and a massive push from the likes of Eddie Howe and his coaching team, I also think it might actually free the players a bit. So whereas before it might, if they hadn't won the cup, and also after going out of the FA Cup, there might have been a bit of a wrench to try and we've got to definitely finish in at least the top 5. I think now that kind of pressure is still there, but it's a different kind of one where they can perhaps play with a bit more freedom, openness, and might actually help them rather than hinder them in the run-in in the last few games.
Let's talk about the fixtures then that are up, and I'll read them out for people who are listening and obviously aren't aware of these in great detail. They have Brentford at home, Leicester away, Man U and Crystal Palace at home in fairly quick succession, I think. Villa away, Ipswich at home, Brighton away, and then the final 3 games are Chelsea home, Arsenal away, Everton at home. Looks kind of a good mixed bag to me. Only a couple of tough games at the end there. 3, Brighton, Chelsea, Arsenal, they're going to be right in it. Sometimes they're the games you want though, because if you take points there, you're golden. But how do you view those fixtures?
I think it's a really interesting running. Really, I think it's got a real mix. It's got people fighting at the top and bottom, and some quite positive home games as well, where mirrored with away results that we've had positively this season. So I think, it's the old cliche, but you have to play everybody at some point. And people might point out and say, oh, you've got Leicester, that's a home banker, but they are going to win a game at some point or score a goal.
I'm sure they are.
So I think it's a really interesting run. It offers up some brilliant games, and I think for me, looking at it from a Newcastle fan, I think if I was Eddie Howe and I was sitting in front of them players, I think you'd have to put that fixture list on a wall and say, this is a real positive fixture list that we can really get a good amount of points out if we play to our top of our capabilities. So let's go for it, and why not? Especially with that 5th place now looking nailed on to be Champions League as well. I think it's a no-brainer, and go out, enjoy yourself, show what you did on Sunday in the Carabao Cup, and that you can do that week in, week out. And I don't think there's no reason why, when you get to those kind of last 3 games, which is a bit of the tough running, you can't at least still be within a shout of finishing within the top 5 from a Newcastle point of view.
So last question that I've been asking everyone is, will your team be in the Champions League next season, yes or no?
I think because there's 5 places, yes. I think if it was a top 4 this season, I still think it'd be a bit of a struggle, because I just think there are a few tricky fixtures in there, and maybe the Carabao Cup might hit us somewhere. But I think with it being 5, I think they'll just scrape in towards the end.
Who are the other 4? Obviously Liverpool, Arsenal. Who are the other 2?
Definitely Forest. What did you say? Liverpool, Arsenal, Forest, and I think Man City.
Yeah.
I just think they'll just the quality, the money, the experience they've got. I just think, and you can tell that even though it's not as fluid, they're just starting to get a little bit back, and you can never bet against them. But that's who I'd say is the top 5: Liverpool, Arsenal, Forest, Man City, and us in 5th.
Very good, very good. Thanks very much to Rob. We shall see him next season, obviously, and we do these, but it's good to have him with us, and we shall catch up with another fan next. Good to have our Brighton fan correspondent Az back with us today. Az, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, excited for the run-in. Should be a good one.
Well, yeah, it should be. It should be. I mean, you're right in the thick of it. You weren't a few weeks ago when you lost 7-0 to someone, but it's been pretty mad since then. How do you feel about where you're at now? Especially the last 6 weeks have been pretty perfect for you.
It's been unbelievable. I mean, the 7-0 was a bit of a wake-up call, I think, because we'd been struggling before, lots of draws, not some pretty poor performances. You get absolutely high. It just had to be to you, didn't it? That was the problem with it. But since then, it's been amazing. I mean, it was an anomaly that game. I mean, we did have injuries and there was problems, and you took all your chances, and but yeah, since then it's been unbelievable, and I think we're in a really, really good position, and we've already had some great results against teams who are fighting for that top 4 as well. What we need to do is not blow it and drop points to the teams at the bottom end of the table, which would be typical of Brighton.
Yes, we'll look at your run-in. For people who haven't seen the league table, Brighton 47 points in 7th, but only 2 points behind Chelsea in 4th. So it's really super condensed. Brighton's run-in is as follows: Villa at home, Palace away, Leicester at home, Brentford away, West Ham home, Newcastle home, Wolves away, Liverpool home, and then Spurs away. On paper, that looks really tough. But one of the things that struck me when I speak to you is you seem to do better against the better teams. So how do you view that run-in?
Flip it round. I think it's a good run-in. I think it's a good run-in for us. I mean, you look at the results against Chelsea, against Bournemouth, against Fulham, against Man City at the weekend. These are really, really positive results for us. I look at this and think the next 2 are absolutely key against Aston Villa and Palace. They are tough fixtures. Villa obviously fighting for the top 4 as well. Palace absolutely thrashed us early in the season. There's always, bad blood between us when we play. And then it's a really good run. It's Leicester, Brentford, West Ham. I'd expect us to get 9 points out of those, but you never really know. And honestly, I think if we can go into the Newcastle game That's the 35th game of the season. Newcastle, Wolves, Liverpool, Spurs. I can see us doing well. Liverpool should have the title wrapped up by then. The penultimate game of the season. Spurs away. Come on, we should be beating them. We're a much better team than they have been all season. Wolves will probably be safe by then as well. I imagine all 3 promoted teams will be down. I look at those last 3 games. I think they're really good for us. So the next 2 are key. If we can get 3-4 points from those, I actually fancy us. It's ridiculous to be saying that, but I think 5th is a real possibility.
When you look at the teams around you as well, I mean, who do you think any teams particularly nailed, and who are your biggest worries in terms of the teams that could pip you to the Champions League spots?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Liverpool, Arsenal, Forest, that's set. I can't see any of those falling out. I look at all the other teams though and think, they're capable of. I mean, we are as well. Don't get me wrong. We're not unbeatable, but I look at a lot of those teams. I look at Chelsea. I look at Man City. I look at Newcastle, Fulham, Villa. None of them are in particularly good runs at the moment, and I can see them all dropping points between now and the season. I mean, in multiple games. So I'd be surprised if any of the teams go on a run between now and the end of the season where they win 75, 80% of the games. Teams City, I think, should get 4th. I can't really see any reason why they won't now they're out of the cups and they've got so much firepower with Marmoush and Haaland and other players like that. But that 5th spot is open. Newcastle, I think, are the biggest threat. Great win in the cup, but their form has been mixed over the last few weeks. And of all the teams, we're in the best run at the moment. So I just really hope we can continue that.
So last question that I've been asking all the fans. You think you're the 3rd I've spoken to. So we'll see if everyone says the same sort of answer. Will your team be in the Champions League next season or not?
That's such a horrible question. I think we have a real chance. It would be so unbelievably ahead of schedule that I can't even fathom it happening. I think we'll probably just miss out. I think there'll be something, and I reckon it'll probably be that period where Leicester, Brentford, West Ham. I think we lose one and we draw one of those or something like that, and it's a bit of a disappointing end. That's the pessimist in me. I think we have a chance, but to me, those 3 games are the key ones. So I'm going to say no, but hopefully we can surprise me.
Excellent.
But if you do my dog there, do a massive sigh.
I was just about to say you will hear from us next week in our opposition preview, and as his dog as well, who makes periodic appearances on Black Box. He's off I've got to let the dog out. I periodically here as well. So yeah, do hear from us next week. But we'll speak to more Champions League fans after this. Our resident Fulham fan from the Cottage Talk podcast. Good to speak to you again, mate. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I've literally just spoken to a Bournemouth fan, my namesake Matt Davies. So I was saying to you, you're the last fan I'm speaking to. I've enjoyed the exercise. I must start with an apology. When I devised this podcast a week ago, Fulham weren't on my list. But then you beat Spurs, and I look at the table, and you're right in it. In fact, I'll just reference the table now and then get your thoughts on it.
Sure.
Fulham, they're up to 8th. You're only 3 points behind Man City in 5th, which looks like it's going to be enough for a Champions League place. Are you dreaming about it now? How are you feeling?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good, Matt, because when I look at the fixtures coming up, and I've talked about it on my show, if I listen to the experts that are talking about the matches coming up, they don't think Fulham have a shot because Fulham are playing teams above them, a couple of teams that are near them, but the majority of them are right around them, like I said. So, but the way I'm looking at it is that if you go back to the beginning of the year, Fulham have played better and gotten points off of the teams that are around them. They tend to raise their game, as we saw when we played Nottingham Forest and Newcastle United, to teams that are on their level or better than them. So I'm actually feeling pretty good. I like the fact that they're facing all of these teams like Liverpool, Arsenal, Bournemouth. I could also mention Aston Villa, Man City. All these teams are in the fixtures ahead. So for me, I'm excited to see exactly what Fulham can do because I know that they tend to play at a certain level against these teams. and we'll see where the chips fall. But I'm feeling that Fulham are going to be in Europe. I don't know if they're good enough and basically get the breaks to get them to Champions League. Obviously, I would love that. Don't get me wrong. But it might be a bridge way too far for them. I think Europa League and Conference League is more realistic, but you never know.
Let me reference those pictures then, because I've been doing this with every other fan, just reading out the run-ins. Fulham's, for people who aren't aware, is Arsenal away, Liverpool at home, Bournemouth away, Chelsea at home in the next 4. Then it's Southampton away, Villa away, Everton home, Brentford away, Man City at home. Do you think the next 4 games, like you say, against teams around you, I mean, if you're still in the race, within 3 points after that, then maybe do you feel even more optimistic?
Yes, because when I look at the matches coming up, and also on top of it, Matt, we are playing a quarterfinal FA Cup match against Crystal Palace, and on a Saturday, and then on a Tuesday, we're going to the Emirates. Oh, by the way, that's being followed up by the following Sunday playing Liverpool at Craven Cottage. That is a daunting task. So if they can get through that with that FA Cup match, and then those 2 opponents after that. And if they can, I'm dreaming when I say this, if they could get 4 points out of those 2 matches, then Fulham are in it to the end. But we'll see, because we're talking about Liverpool and Arsenal. But I'm not crazy when I say this, because I've watched Fulham this entire season. I wouldn't bet against them doing that. I would not bet against them beating one of those 2 teams. I put my money, if I was a betting man, on that Liverpool match at Craven Cottage. I really would, because we match up really well against them. Arsenal at the Emirates is going to be difficult. But what's great about what's going on with my club is that as the season is winding down, we're actually going to be getting players back, and we've added players to the mix. You're now seeing Ryan Sessegnon playing a role. Willian obviously now has been added. We're going to be getting back our best right back probably within a few weeks in Kenny Tete. That's going to change Fulham. That will absolutely change Fulham. And then hopefully sometime in April, we're going to get Harry Wilson back. So when we're going through our stretch run, we're going to be pretty strong. So that gives me feeling that we can get into Europe. I just don't know if Champions League is where we're going to end up, because I think that might be too far away. But you never know. Like I said, you never know. I'm just excited that we can have this conversation. I could be part of the show talking about that.
I asked Matt, the Bournemouth fan, this around their manager.
Yeah.
Any potential stumbling block around? There's already talk of Marco Silva to Spurs. Is that any distraction, or is that just background noise?
For me, it's complete background noise. And I will say this, and I'm glad that you mentioned, Matt, the Bournemouth supporter, than yourself. What's fun about all this is that I think all 3 teams that were promoted together have such great chemistry, and there's a reason why we're all where we are. I gave this a lot of thought. The reason why I feel that we're all going to be in Europe has to do with having the right manager, having the right ownership that is backing the manager, and the players playing within the system that the manager is laying out. If you're doing those 3 things, you are going to be difficult to beat, and you have a chance to be in Europe. So I love the fact that you're where you are and Bournemouth are where they are and where we are. I don't think it's by accident. I think it's by design. So I think we all have a chance to potentially get in the Champions League. You have the best chance. Bournemouth are a very good side. They're going to be difficult. But getting back to Marco Silva, I don't see him going to Spurs. And I'll ask anyone that brings me this question. Anyone in their right mind that takes that job right now needs their head examined, playing for that ownership, playing for Daniel Levy. I would not do it. I understand the allure of Spurs, but if Fulham are in Europe, why? Same thing with Bournemouth. Why would Areola leave? He's in a good situation. He's in an ownership group that is backing him. Same thing with Nuno. Again, I look at the managers, and then you look at a team like Spurs. You're asking me about Spurs, and they're a dumpster fire. And part of it has to do with the manager. It does. It's part of it does. So yes, I understand the allure of Marco Silva, but I think that if Marco Silva did that, I think he would be basically out pretty soon, because that is the history of that club. They go through managers so quickly. So I would hope to think that he would not go there. And I think a lot of this is noise right now, but it's okay. It's okay because it shows how far Fulham have progressed, Matt.
So if I were asking you to put your money where your mouth is, sort of one question in two parts. Will Fulham be in the Champions League next season? And if not, which European competition will they be in, if any?
Okay. So I'm going to say they won't be in Champions League, but I have a feeling they're going to sneak their way into the Europa League. Mattering on how everything matriculates, I think they could end up in the Europa League. They could obviously end in the Conference League. Listen, I predicted 7th at the beginning of the season. I think they could better that. That's the way I'm looking at it. It's not crazy to think that. Like I said, I see the fixtures coming up. I see the players returning. I see an opportunity. And I think Fulham are going to end up in the Europa League. I put my money on that.
Last question then that I've asked everyone as well. Who are your 5 teams to be in the Champions League next season then?
Okay. Well, I didn't give this much thought, but I will go there. So I will say, obviously, Liverpool, Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, Chelsea, and then I'm going to go with Aston Villa.
Oh, nice. Okay. That's a good array of answers. I like it. Right. Russ had the final word there. Great stuff. We shall speak to Russ potentially in an FA Cup semi-final then, because we're both in it. You never know.
That's right.
Never know. Crazy. I mean, they're tough games, aren't they? We've got Brighton away, which is awful. Are you at home to Palace or away?
We are home to Palace, but Palace did a number on us at Craven Cottage several weeks ago. So it'll come down to what have they learned from that match and how that they can take care of Crystal Palace. It'll be it's going to be difficult for both of us, but I would love to be having another show talking about us playing at Wembley together.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there. Thanks for us. And if we don't make it to Wembley, we'll definitely speak to him next season. Just before we speak with our final couple of fans in this episode, a word of thanks to Home Move Estate Agents and Ben Sales for their support. As always, if you're looking to buy or sell in the East Midlands, especially around the Notts area, I should say, do check out Home Move Estate Agents. The link is in the description. It's ben@homemoveea.co.uk. If you want to email him, 0115 832 1321 if you want to call. And as I say, the link is in the description. I know they were looking for houses around the Bridgeford area if you're looking to sell. There's a lot of hot demand around there at the moment. The weather is turning as well, which I'm always have been told. Ben can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it's the best time to sell when the weather turns going into April. Everyone's house looks a bit better in the sun, doesn't it? So yeah, do check those guys out. 5-star rated on Google. Lots of good testimonials there. I've never heard a bad word said about them, despite doing these adverts for these guys for basically a year now. So yeah, very confident that good service guaranteed. So do check out Home Move Estate Agents and Ben Sales. And thanks as ever for their support. Steve Farmer, good to catch up with you again. How you doing?
I'm good, Matt. Yeah, you okay?
Yeah, very much so. Looking forward to talking Champions League with you. Before we get into this season or next season, Premier League wise, talking about the Champions League this season, am I right in saying you've been to every game so far?
I went to every game bar Bruges in the group section because it was my wife's birthday, and no chance, mate. There was no chance I was ever getting to that one. But every other one, and going to Paris as well. So yeah, I'm pretty much ever present.
And I suppose the question from that is, because this is what hopefully we're going to experience as Forest fans next season, what's it been like? What's it meant to you?
It's been incredible. It's been incredible on so many different levels. You know, I mean, just by just standing and listening or sitting and listening to the Champions League music is just something out of this world. You know, we experienced that first time over in Bern, you know, when we play Young Boys, and I'll be honest with you, we probably didn't think, in all honesty, that we would have got as far as what we've got, and thinking we're going to go to the Parc des Princes and play PSG is kind of beyond our wildest dreams. But seeing so many different places, not seeing an ounce of any hassle, trouble. We've enjoyed the cities that we've been to, like Bruges most recently was absolutely stunning. Monaco was a bit different, but yeah, I mean, different cultures really, and it's just getting everybody together and experiencing, actually seeing some of the best players in Europe, and having that opportunity. And it's been great for my children as well, to a degree, when they've been able to go. I mean, obviously the games are at night time, and they certainly haven't been away with us as such, but it's just been, we've just enjoyed every minute of the journey, as I say, and at every point we're thinking, is it going to end now? No, it's not. Right, we go again. Yeah, it's been, as I say, it's been fantastic from start to finish, and we'll see where we end up.
Any negatives around ticket prices, I guess, at home? Has that dampened it a little bit for Villa fans or not?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the tickets when we went to Monaco were about £18. So, in comparison, Villa are pretty much, I mean, we have corporate tickets at the moment. Well, I'll be honest, so we had corporate tickets this year just as a one-off, because we wanted to enjoy the ride. That's what we wanted to do. So, from a club perspective, I think there's been lots of fans that have taken that opportunity. The tickets in the terraces are, I think, about £100 for Champions League games. So the club have fully taken advantage, from a profit perspective or monetary perspective, for sure. We'll see what next year brings, really. They'd already, from our perspective, they've already put the prices out in terms of what that's going to look like, and it will also incorporate Champions League football, whereas this year we've had to pay additional for that. So that'll be interesting, because if we don't make it, then maybe they might have to reconsider. Who knows?
Let's talk about if you are going to make it then. Currently, as we sit here now, you're ninth, 3 points behind City and fifth, so it's very condensed. Just looking at your running, I'll just read it out for the people who aren't aware. Brighton away, Forest at home, Southampton away, Newcastle home, City away, Fulham home, Bournemouth away, Spurs home, United away. I think of all the fans I'm going to speak to, on paper, that's the most difficult or second most difficult. So how are you feeling about it?
No, we'll put a positive spin on it. Say it's in our own hands. That's what we'll say at this current time. Yeah, hey, look, listen, and when your league form after Champions League games is not great, then obviously that doesn't bode well with 2 games coming up. However, that being said, most recently we won the game against we played Bruges, we won the game against Brentford away. So hopefully that we've turned the corner there. But I don't know. I mean, listen, would you rather it be in your own hands? Possibly, I would. Yeah. I mean, yes, it's a tough run, but we've got a decent squad now. I think I'd said to you right at the back at the very start of the season, it was a marathon and not a sprint. And our squad wasn't that strong. We didn't make many good signings in the summer. I think I'd said to you back in the day, but that we're only got now Onana and Barkley, who aren't fit, and hopefully they will be fit after the international break. So hopefully there's no injuries, touchwood, coming back, but I think we can't be any stronger. We can't be any better equipped. So yeah, I think it's going to be, I think it goes one of 2 ways, doesn't it? Effectively, that's what's going to happen. But at this current time, hopeful, hopeful, because you look at like your Man Cities and see, I'm thinking like you would foresee that they are going to do it, but I think we kind of messed us over the weekend, didn't we? Like Brighton were the better side. So actually, I don't really fear going to the Etihad anymore.
The last question then before I let you go. You're the first fan I'm speaking to, so I'm interested to see if the answer for this is the same. But will Aston Villa be in the Champions League next season or not?
No, I think we might just miss out.
Where are you going to finish then?
I think we'd probably be on the fringes of. So I'd probably say something like that. I think it's down to the run of games. I think you've got so many teams vying for something similar, and we are playing so many of them. Do you know what I mean? In every game, it's kind of a cliche, but it seems that every game will kind of be a cup final. I just don't, I hope we just don't run out of steam. It depends how far we go. I mean, look, it'd be great if we could beat PSG, wouldn't it? Over the 2 legs, but I think you will. And I said to you before, I think everybody's rooting for you. As I say, you're in a very similar situation where I was going away on holiday last year. My little ones are there wearing Villa shirts, and everybody's like, "Oh, I love Villa. I hope you do it. I hope you do it." And I think, kind of from a neutral perspective, I think that's kind of where you are. I mean, the history of your club and everything else like that is, and the way that you're playing, by the way, kind of warrants that. So you've sustained it for so long.
Yeah, that's pretty mad. We've discussed it at length. I'm very, very confident. Yeah, certainly. I don't know who the fifth team changes from all the time. Last week I said Bournemouth. This week I'm saying Newcastle. Maybe next week I'll say Villa. I don't know. I have to see how these results go. But yeah, right. Steve, good to speak to you. We'll catch up soon because we're playing each other in 2 or 3 weeks, aren't we? So yeah, we'll speak.
We are indeed, yeah. Early April.
Excellent. Good man. Thank you very much. Always good to speak to my namesake, Matt Davies, our regular Bournemouth fan. Matt, good to hear from you again. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm well, Matt. Yeah, very well. How about yourself?
Good. I was just saying before we start recording, this has been an interesting exercise. You're the penultimate fan that I'm speaking to. Of many, the Champions League race is condensed. Just to put people in the picture of where Bournemouth are, they're 10th, 4 points off Man City. When I devised this a week ago, it looked a lot better for you. How are you feeling about it now?
Yeah, a lot more pessimistic than I was a few weeks ago, Matt, if I'm honest. And I just think that's because it's all caught up with us a little bit. I think we've run out of steam a little bit. I think the injuries were in some ways a blessing because it galvanised the squad. And what it did is it brought that sort of siege mentality and that togetherness. And we got ourselves into a really strong sort of slick rhythm. It's almost been disrupted by the fact that certain players have come back into the fold that clearly aren't quite yet up to speed and up to match fitness. But Iriola's obviously had to accommodate them some way, and it's almost disrupted us a little bit. And the great run that we were on was always going to come to a bit of an end. We've been a bit unfortunate in games. When I say unfortunate, we've not put teams to bed, so we've not really been good enough in either box. The Saturday against Brentford was they just did a job on us. Let's be honest, hold our hands up and say that they were probably the better side overall because they were better in both boxes. But we have actually thrown points away lately as well. Tottenham away, 2-0 up, cruising, should have been probably 4-0 up, and somehow we contrived to draw the game. Liverpool home, we were unlucky. Brighton away, again, lose it 2-1 after getting back to 1-1. And then the Wolves home game where we lose 1-0 somehow because we've gone down to 10 men. So we've thrown points away, and I just feel at the moment it's caught up with us a little bit.
The interesting thing was a couple of weeks ago, we were discussing who's going to get in. It was myself and Darren Fletcher, the TNT Sports commentator. We both felt it might be you finishing 5th. Obviously, as you referenced, it's fallen away a bit. But if we look at your run-in, you've got Ipswich home, West Ham away, Fulham home, Palace away, United at home, Arsenal away, Villa home, City away, and Leicester at home. That is tough, but it gives you an opportunity to claw back the points if you can get results at like City and Fulham in particular, I guess. Do you see a scenario where you can turn it around then?
Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out yet. So I'm certainly, like I say, I'm a lot more pessimistic than I was a few weeks ago. I just think that everybody got maybe a little bit carried away. And I don't just include our own fan base in that. I include a lot of pundits, a lot of reporters. They were suddenly sort of tipping Bournemouth to finish within the top 4, top 5. And even that didn't really sit that easy with me because I just felt that we'd been on this incredible run. And that had to come to an end at some point. We had some sort of tough fixtures coming up. And I just think when the season started, we were both on this pod, Matt, weren't we? Opening day at the City Ground. And the expectation, I think, from both clubs was to just have a solid season and probably finish and maybe progress from where both clubs had been the season before. And that's pretty much, you've had a phenomenal season. So to be where you are is incredible, but you deserve it because you're getting the job done week after week. You're getting the results. You're effective in both boxes. And that's the difference. Whereas I think with us, after losing Solanke and other players and the sort of transition around that, I always felt that this season would all be about progress, really. And as it stands, that is exactly what we've got. We're sitting in 10th at the moment, still with a fantastic opportunity, but it's all about gradual progression. And I feel that that's where we're at. That's probably more of a realistic placing. I just think we all got a little bit carried away with ourselves maybe a month or so ago.
So the question I've been asking everyone is, will your team be in the Champions League next season? Obviously, you're going to say no. So I'll reframe it a little bit. Which European competition, if any, do you think you'll be in? Bearing in mind it could go down from 8th to 11th. There's mad scenarios. But as we sit here now in probably the top 8 get into Europe, do you think you'll make it into any form of European football next season?
Yeah, I still think we've got a fantastic opportunity, Matt. I really do. I feel that we have got real quality in the squad, and with the players coming back, if we can get some of these players back up to full fitness and firing again like they were before their injuries, we still got a few more to come back in as well. I just think that certain players have gone off the boil a bit at key times. Semenyo being one of them. He's had his head turned a little bit, and that's been a factor for us. Ivan Nilsson's come back, but he's done really well. But it's meant that Ouattara's come out the side, probably undeservedly. So there's been a bit of disruption there. Zabani's obviously been suspended. Housen now, there's real talk around him being moved on in the summer for big money. So it's maybe disrupted us a little bit. But however, having said all of that, I do think that we have the potential and the ability to come again and go on another decent run. When you just reeled off those fixtures there, Matt, up until probably Arsenal away and City away, that run of games looks quite favourable, really. There's some points in there for us potentially. So I certainly wouldn't rule us out of the Europa League placings, but I just feel that as it stands this season, the Champions League, I mean, we're ahead of schedule. Our owner, Bill Foley, said we'll deliver European football, maybe the season after next or maybe next season. But to be in the Champions League discussion this season, I think we're way ahead of schedule. So in answer to your question, I feel that the top 8 is achievable for us. I think probably 8th place at this moment in time looks the most realistic when you look at the other sides in and around it.
Is the early Iraola to Spurs talk a distraction or not?
Slightly, but not really. I think that's just a lot of talk, if I'm honest. Can I see him going there at the moment? You would never rule it out. I think obviously Tottenham, bigger football club than us, but it would be a risk for him. So I don't think that's affecting things too much. I think maybe the speculation around some of our players, maybe the likes of Kirkes, Semenyo, maybe if he's had his head turned, and Housen, I think that's affecting us more. Kepa has obviously gone off the boil a little bit. He'd been brilliant previously, but in recent weeks he's made errors. The penalty against Tottenham spring to mind, the 2 goals last week. Questionable, particularly the first one. I don't know what he's doing there. Really not commanding his area. So that's been a hindrance as well. So, when you factor all those things in, I don't think it's so much the manager that's of a concern at the moment, but maybe some of the players.
Last couple of questions before we let you go. In fact, last question. If not Bournemouth, then which teams are making the Champions League next season for you?
Well, obviously, definitely Liverpool and Arsenal, without doubt. So we have 3 places up for grabs now, isn't it, really, after that? So you will definitely be one of them. I've got no doubt about that. I think as it stands, you will finish 3rd. I believe that. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I wouldn't have been saying it at the start of the season, as I'm sure a lot of your fans wouldn't, and I'm sure you boys can't believe you're saying it, but it's there for you because of the way that you've performed consistently throughout the season. You'll have a minor setback with a result like you had at our place, 5-0, and then you respond with a 7-0 at home to Brighton and kick back into gear again. And then that's been consistent. So you've been able to produce the goods week in, week out, and show real quality in all areas of the football pitch. So I believe that 3rd place is yours for the taking. I feel that Man City will get 4th. I think they've got enough about them to ensure that they at least get in the top 4. And it's the 5th place, really, that's massively up for grabs. But Newcastle seem to have the momentum, having won the Carabao Cup and seeing how they performed on Sunday and knowing a lot of their players, knowing Eddie Howe obviously very well like I do. He tends to finish seasons very strongly and he's got real momentum behind him now. And I think that can be a catalyst for Newcastle to take that final Champions League place. I think there's question marks around Chelsea, Aston Villa. Brighton are a dark horse. So Brighton have come on strong, and they've got some real quality in their side. So they could be a threat. But I think the top 5 will be that. I'm going Liverpool, Arsenal, yourselves, Man City, and Newcastle for the top 5. and then 6, 7, 8. Let's just say that at least the top 8 will make Europe. I would say Villa, Brighton, and ourselves. That would be my top 8.
That's interesting. You've not mentioned Chelsea there. That's
sorry. No, I've not included.
That's fine. It's a big fall from grace for them. Even the Chelsea fan wasn't very confident.
But it wouldn't surprise me, Matt. It wouldn't surprise me. However, that was a mistake on my part, really. So if we're going 5, so 6, 7, 8, then it would have to be Chelsea, Villa, Brighton, which means that we're finishing 9th.
No, oh no! What's our note to end on? Oh dear. Well, we might speak to Matt again if we both get through in the FA Cup. I'm not 100% optimistic about our game. I'd rather play Man City than Brighton. Yeah, but we'll definitely speak to Matt next season, which in a way is unfortunate because it feels like a 36-game season with Bournemouth in the Premier League because we just get nothing against you in any game.
But we feel like that about Brentford. That's exactly how we feel about Brentford at the moment. We just feel like every time we play them, we never beat them. They're just a complete bogey side, and no matter what we do against them, we always end up coming out the wrong side. So you always have this team, Matt, don't you, that frustrates you like this?
But it's definitely you for us because we couldn't beat Man City, and obviously we beat them. But yeah, Bournemouth are like the white whale. So one day we will get you. One day, right? We shall leave it there. Good to speak to Matt, like I say. So that brings us to the end of hearing from our fan regulars with their teams who are involved in the Champions League race. Hope you enjoyed that. Do drop your top 5s in the comments below. Hopefully they all include Forest, but I won't take offence if they don't. If you've enjoyed this, do us a favour. Hit like on this video. Hit subscribe if you're on YouTube. Do consider channel membership for YouTube, Patreon for audio listeners, or just a lovely 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And another couple of quick bits to shout out for you. I mentioned Patreon. I don't shout out very much, but if you're interested in Patreon, then you will get early access to podcasts like this, anything that's pre-recorded. I'll put that out for members and patrons early. So it's worth it for that. If it's also, if you're an audio listener and you sign up for Patreon, then you get it ad-free. Those are the ones that are piped in. You'll still have to enjoy my ads, but you'll be able to not have the other ads played in, and you'll get invites to a couple of members events every year, one in the summer, one in the winter. And so also early access to live show tickets, which leads me nicely into just a quick plug for our next live show, first of the year, Thursday, April the 3rd at the Trent Nav. Obviously, myself, Greg, Mikey, Temps and Pete will be on stage along with former Reds midfielder Lewis McGugan. Tickets are only, I think it's fair, a good price, £5. So again, check out the link in the description. We shall hopefully see you there. It starts at 7 p.m. on Thursday, April the 3rd. Like I say, hope you've enjoyed this, and if you haven't, then no offence taken. We shall be back on Monday, where we're either going to do something on the fixtures or something around squad building for next season, or it looks like we'll work that out. But we'll do both topics at some point. Tuesday with Nathan Joyce around Evangelos Marinakis' interest in South American football, and a bit of chat around Dominguez, Ramon Sosa, Murillo, maybe a bit of transfer stuff. And then Wednesday with Adam Summerton, TNT Sports commentator, around Forest in Europe and the differences between Premier League and European football. And then we'll be turning our attention back to the match action end of the international break when Forest take on Brighton in the FA Cup. We'll have the opposition preview, and we've got the match preview, excuse me. I've already recorded the opposition preview with Az. So I'll put that out, and then we'll have our post-match show after the game on the 29th, which, as mentioned, you can enjoy at the Trent Navigation. Right, hopefully you have enjoyed that. Good to have you with us. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, and if we don't see you on Monday, we shall see you soon.